Hey everybody, Nick here, back with another video for you guys. So, a difficult topic for me today, but many years ago would have been extremely difficult. So, this is the 10-year anniversary, November 6th, of my mother's passing. And it's really quite surreal because it feels still like yesterday. I have improved emotionally and recovered quite a bit since then. And I'm gonna just talk a bit about my mom, who she was, and how it all happened, and the road to recovery. Because I think in this life, this insane place we live, this reality, and I've talked about it before, about pain and suffering. And this is one of the biggest, I think, things I've had to go through when it comes to pain and suffering. Because I think, you know, I'm I'm 41 now, and I lost my mother when I was 31. So a pretty young age to lose a parent. Most of us think that we're going to lose our parents, when we're into our 50s, 60s. But it doesn't always work that way or happen that way. So, yeah, who my mother was. I still remember quite a lot of good memories as a child, also some bad ones, but I'll get into that. And firstly, I wanted to say how I think it's important to talk about this because it really does help people feel like they're not the only ones that go through it. And it also helps them to, I don't know, just it helped me when I heard other people talking about their situation. So, who my mother was. Growing up, we were a middle class family. My mom was a stay at home mom. I was a kid of the 80s and teenager in the 90s. But my mom, she came from also a broken home because her father, my grandfather, had an affair, and basically my grandmother had to raise my mom and my aunt on her own pretty much. And that couldn't have been easy. And my mom pretty much had to do the same when I was a teenager. So, yeah, we had a household of 5 kids, 3 kids from my parents' previous marriages. And then it was me and my sister, who we had both the same parents. My dad worked, very hard, worked for Canada Post, was the breadwinner, but my mom was also, she wanted to work, but I think my father was more content with her staying home and taking care of the kids, as it was pretty normal in the 80s. These days, if you tried to do that, you wouldn't be able to make enough money. Cost of living 30 plus years ago was just, from then to now is just ridiculous. But I guess back then you could make it work. So that's how it went. Things from my childhood that I do remember that were really, really lovely was that my mom would pack us lunches. Christmases we never went without. We would always get gifts on Christmas. I'm not bragging about any of this, but I'm just simply stating how it was. But we always kind of knew who we were. We were never overly spoiled. So, as kids, we did appreciate everything that was done for us. Halloween's, my mom made our costumes for Halloween. We weren't wealthy, as I mentioned. We were middle class. We lived in like Oshawa. We lived all over the place because my father used to take jobs with Canada Post in different places. We grew up north as well, Northern Ontario, Canada, a small town. So I do remember my mom basically doing a lot of good things for us as kids. So a few things that I do remember, very nice things besides the Christmases and Thanksgiving dinners and the Christmas dinners and all that stuff when we would get together as a family. Every Friday, and this may sound like I was spoiled, but I kind of was. But I don't have that mentality these days. I grew up, with my head on my shoulders, and I was taught properly, manners and all that stuff. Of course, that's another programming method that we all go through. No matter what you want to believe, humans are programmed from a young age. So But I remember Fridays, I would come home, my mom would pick me up from school, or I would get home sometimes, and there would be like a toy on my bed. Even a simplistic toy, it wouldn't be like anything too fancy, but I just remember those even today, the niceties. Was definitely one of my mom, if not my mom's favorite. I don't know. I was pretty close to my mom growing up, and yeah, those moments I remember for sure. I was even given Curious George. I was a huge fan of Curious George. I had a stuffed animal since I was like 3 or 4 years of age. I actually still have it. No kids to give it to, and that's fine. But I didn't have the heart to give it away because it was from my mother. So I still do have that, and he's in one piece. I remember my mom used to take us out as kids whenever it would snow, and we'd go tobogganing and things like that. So who my mom was, she, I don't know how she met my father, but in her previous marriage, her first husband, she was very young when she had her first son, and I guess the father had kidnapped him or something like that. There was a little bit of a fiasco. So my mom got hurt quite a bit, as a young adult. She met my father, and then for some reason, I don't know how, but they got into drug use. Now, I don't know if it was my father who got my mom into it or what. I don't know what happened. I don't know the details. But this is long after we were already kids. Like, I was about 10, 11 years old at this point. And I do remember them always being in their bedroom for long periods of time. No one knew why. Had I been older, I probably would have figured it out, but I was still a kid. And I forgive both my parents for that stuff. I mean, it didn't affect us as kids growing up. We never went without meals. We never missed a day of school unless there was a big snowstorm. That was awesome because we lived in a small town. So if there'd be like huge snowstorms, there'd be no bus pickup. So that was a fun time in my childhood. My mom was a good person. As she got older, she got away from drugs. I mean, she divorced my father because my father started getting abusive, and it never really affected me too much because I was already quite old enough, but it affected my younger sister quite a bit. She had anger issues, and she had how do I explain it? She just had issues, and when we moved to Toronto, and she was, I think, about 10, 11 at that point. I was 12 or 13. And she started hanging out with the wrong crowds and getting into smoking, and, subsequently got pregnant as a young teenager. And I'm totally not judging. I'm just simply stating what happened. So my mom, she got away from drugs, quit smoking, I was very happy to hear that because both my parents had smoked. And unfortunately, they smoked near us, but I don't think they knew that it was affecting us this is the 80s and 90s, right? So yes, my father did abuse my mother physically, but she finally took a stand and got away from that. Moved us to Toronto, just my sister and myself. The other siblings were already adults at that point, had their own lives. So we grew up in Toronto as a young teenager, and my mom did the best she could for us. She ended up working. She went back to college, university. She wasn't perfect. No one is perfect. She didn't ever mistreat us. We were disciplined the right way. My sister wasn't having it, so she ended up moving out early. I stayed living with my mother in Toronto until she died, actually. So I didn't move out on my own until I was already in my 30s. I didn't feel like I needed to move out. I had my own space. I had all of that. Everything was fine. I still worked. I contributed as well. So I think my mom got into drinking as well. She wouldn't be like a drunkard or anything like that. It wouldn't affect her regular life. She did still do things. She was still able to, live her life. But I think she was very stressed because of my sister. My sister mistreated her very badly, especially after the first child was born. My mom suffered quite a bit because of my younger sister. And, I don't hold any ill will anymore because it's way in the past. She used the grandkids as leverage over her, and that really can cause distress to a person, especially my mom that really loved her two granddaughters, because my sister ended up having another child after, a few years later. And that was the wrong way for her to treat my mom. And she did that because my mom wouldn't be able to babysit on a day that she wanted or whatever. So my mom suffered that way. And she was always constantly high stressed, trying to pay the bills. And my mom did meet another man, and he was a good man as well, in the late 90s. Very good guy. And they stayed together until my mom's death. And he treated us well as well. And so how my mom passed away, basically, and how it all went down. She had started having issues. I don't know if she had like Hep C. I don't exactly know what the real disease was. All I know is that it affected the liver. And she continually drank, even though the doctor said you had to quit. And that didn't help her situation. It exacerbated the situation. And so going back to 2013, 14, I was in Brazil in 2013. And then my mom had told me that she had been getting ill and not feeling the greatest, but it wasn't anything to be concerned about. But I decided I was going to move back to Canada just to see what's up and spend time with my mom. So I moved back at the end of 2013. And I remember when I came back home after many, many months, and she gave me a huge hug. It was very nice. It's crazy how I remember that. It's like 11 years ago. So I moved back in, and flash forward to November 2014, or let's say October. I remember my birthday, my 31st birthday. She gave me a card and a huge hug. And that was the last time I got a hug from her, was my 31st birthday, and which is October 18th. So she said, I have to go in for a procedure, and I remember her on the phone telling her, oh, it's nothing, it's no big deal. I have fluid building up in the lungs and whatever. I don't exactly know what it was. I thought she'd be in and out, pretty quickly. She went to the hospital, and I remember she was asking me on the phone if I was going to visit her. I said, well, you're going to be out soon anyways, and I never went, and whatever. I didn't think anything of it. Slight little regret there, but I mean, it's not going to kill me or haunt me forever. So they discharged her from the hospital. I don't know if she got the permission or if somebody helped her. I don't know exactly how it happened. She basically discharged on the 1st of November or the 3rd or something like that. Came back home. And it wasn't like freezing cold yet. It's November, but it's not freezing cold. And I remember coming home on the Wednesday, I think it was. And it was like the house was on like boiling hot. She had turned up the temperature to, ridiculous. I guess she was feeling cold. I don't know. And I remember I went to see her, and she said, oh yeah, I'm not feeling good. I don't know. She was dazed, and it was kind of strange. In hindsight, I probably should have said time to go back to the hospital. And we did say that. My stepfather and I were like, if you don't get better by tomorrow or whatever, we're taking you back. Probably shouldn't have waited, but. So I arrived, I remember the morning of her death, I remember I was asking if she wanted anything. She said, oh, just a banana or something. So I got her something, and I went off to work. And came back home from work that day. And I said hi. I could hear the TV on in her room. My room was basically next to hers on the second floor. And I heard nothing. She didn't respond, which is weird. I could see her legs. She was sitting at the chair. And I was like, this is very odd. She didn't say hello. I went in after putting my stuff away, and I was the one that basically I found her there, her lifeless body, and it was so bizarre. Obviously I've never experienced anything like that before, and panic set in, and I'm just thinking maybe she's asleep. You're trying to come up with a logical explanation for this, and no, I started like losing it because I didn't know what to do, and I tried to start doing CPR, and it's so weird when the person's like the feeling of the person being gone, because I don't know how to explain it. It feels like a rag doll. I kind of, sorry for the description, but I think it was too late. I think she had died sooner, and it probably was like an infection that took hold after she had her lungs drained or whatever. I don't know the procedure, because hospitals are full of like bacteria and germs, and so yeah, I was lucky to have our neighbor who was close friends with my mom came right away, and she tried to do her best because I wasn't even there. Yeah, it was a very emotional and very difficult day. Probably the most difficult day of my life. I mean, obviously. And it was too late. When you lose a parent that soon, it's crazy. There's no real words to describe it. You just go into an abyss, and you really don't know what to do, what to think. And people came, everyone that knew her came by to the house, and they had to close off the bedroom until the coroner came, and it was chaos. And I know that this is part of life, I understand, but it's, I went down a really dark path for the next few years to try to deal with the pain. I resort to heavy drinking. It didn't get so bad that I wasn't able to work. I still worked through the pain. What can you do? That's all you can really do. There's no manual that tells you, oh, do this. We're all emotional beings, and I mean, if you're a normal person and a good person, it's going to obviously hit you hard. But if you're like a psychopath or somebody who has no heart, or an evil person, it's not going to make a difference. But yeah, the first few years after her death was just kind of a blur. I mean, even I traveled in 2016, but 2015 was just, I don't remember most of it. I remember I had to organize her stuff and settle accounts and close accounts and do all that stuff that, you do when someone passes away. But it's unbelievably difficult to do all that stuff when you're feeling the way you're feeling. But you do have to build a support system of people that, I had a lot of people come and support me and my stepfather, and we had some good laughs, going through the memories, over time, talking about her. She had two really close friends come by, two guys from her childhood that we've known, and they were hilarious. They're good guys. They helped us organize, and it was just, through the shit came niceties. I know that life is really, really difficult these days, and can, losing someone when you're a young adult is shitty, especially someone you're really close to. But that's all you can do, is just cope. Same thing, life, you gotta cope through all the shit and that this world, that this life has and throws at you. So 10 years, just thinking about it kind of throws me back, but I'll never go back down that dark abyss. I pulled myself out of it. I used my mom's death as kind of an inspiration to try to live my life better and enjoy every moment, even though back then I didn't have the same frame of mind that I have today, where I know that this reality is it's twisted. And some things that were sad is that she had goals in her life that she wanted to do and was never able to do them. She wanted to travel to Ireland, England, and these places. One thing that I know, when I was going through her things and organizing, she had already filled out the passport form and all that stuff because she intended on traveling, but she could never do it. She was too worried about worrying about us as kids or worrying about, you know, my sister's kids, because she always put other people first. She never put herself first. She was very selfless. Sure, like I said, she wasn't perfect. She had her, what do you call it? She was kind of not racist, but she, you know, she didn't like certain nationalities because Toronto, as you know, is a very multicultural city, and she was just very prejudiced with other cultures. Not everybody, obviously. I mean, but like I said, no one's perfect. So yeah, I used her death, like I said, to try and not accomplish, you know, to do the things that I want to do in life. But anyways, I thought I would just throw that video out there because of the anniversary today being, you know, November 6th. Not much more to say about that. That's just the situation that it was. Let me know what you guys think. Have you ever lost anybody at a young age, you know, a parent or close relative, somebody you really loved? You know, even today, I still miss my mom very much. I love her. I'm grateful for, even though she brought me to this world against my will, but I'm still grateful that she took care of me as a baby, you know, all through the years, dealt with my BS as a child, you know, shenanigans. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I tried not to get too emotional during this video, but that's only normal. Thank you guys for watching. Again, yeah, it was a tough time in my life, but let me know what you guys think. Hit the like if you like the video, subscribe if you're new to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video very, very soon. Bye for now.